Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Cloudy Sheep and we are playing Command, Modern Naval and Air Operations, where we want to set up a strike on an enemy airfield here. And we'll discuss a bit in this episode of how we want to do it and what we want to do with it. But a couple of things first. So I've cleaned up the interface a bit by disabling the contact information for all the contacts, so we only now have the circles that are referencing our guys over here. So that should be fine. And the other thing is, when you want to talk about the targets later on a bit, it will be advantageous to take the relief layer over here, because if you're doing that without it, it sometimes takes a bit to update that. You can't really see much of the terrain, and it's sort of all a bit blurry. Whereas I find if you do use the relief layer, and that will be much easier, because you can basically see the terrain much more clearly, and that will be important to mask our approach to the target. Anyway, that being said, our goal for today will be an attack on this airfield, City Slimane over here, which is part of the Naval coalition, so the North African Islamic Alliance, which has taken over Canary Islands down here. If at all possible, we'll also try to fly an attack on the Marrakesh Menara airport down here. But let's first discuss a bit of background of that mission. So the reason we want to attack these airfields is because we have been seeing a lot of enemy planes, such as these F-16s over here, coming in from these airplanes and conducting several missions off the coast of Morocco in the Atlantic over here. Partially these were certainly air combat patrols, like these guys here we suspect are doing now, protecting some of their ships. Partially they were strike missions directed at our ships, and this has been relatively fine so far. We've actually achieved a pretty good ratio over here. We've lost 3 planes overall, whereas we shot down quite a couple of enemies, I think, so far. About 6 Mirages, 2 MiG-25s, and F-16s, I believe. Oh yeah, 12 F-16s. So, and an exchange ratio basically of 1 to 6, which I think is very favorable. But I don't think we'll be able to keep this up, and the reason for that is due to the layout of the terrain over here. As our ships are streaming in towards the south over here, towards our ultimate objective, our lines of supply get much longer, and we're starting to see that more of our engagements are happening sort of in this area down here, because we want to cover our ships. We also want to engage their aircraft down here, so a lot of our missions will be happening much further south. And every time we transfer a plane from our airfields, which are up here basically, these 3 airfields, down to the mission area, we get somewhat uncomfortably close to these 2 airfields here on mainland Morocco. And that poses a danger, because whenever we, let's suppose we have a little air battle over here, we win that quite handily as we did before. We expend all of our ammunition in doing that, as you would typically see, because we typically only have 2 missiles, 2 long-range missiles. So a little dogfight, we expend our ammunition, we kill them. Then our planes will probably immediately run low on fuel as well, and we'll sort of directly stream back here. And that means that if at that moment they scramble some aircraft from over here, some F-16s or another plane, and engage us on the way back, we'd be totally defenseless. We couldn't really fly out too far because of fuel constraints, and we wouldn't be able to fight them either, because we probably expended all of our ammunitions. Likewise, if we do a strike mission down here where we might not even have air ammunitions, they might be particularly vulnerable to going both directions. Furthermore, we'll probably have to station a couple of tankers here just to refuel and get into that area in the first place, which would also be immediately vulnerable to attack patterns over here, especially as our strike ropes start to get further down there. So This makes it somewhat more vulnerable here as well. The other reason is that I'm afraid that our strategic reserves are running a bit dry. So far we've always been able to, in these aircrafts, have a couple of planes on standby, and when we see their air operations are intensifying, we can launch a couple of airplanes, get them down here, and have a little dogfight over here. I don't think that will be viable that much longer due to two reasons. One is, you can see that a lot of these planes are on an enable quick turnaround mission, which is only available for 2 sorties. So our readying time will increase over time for the next couple of missions. So our sustainable operations will drop down because of that alone. The second reason is that I think, well, basically our planes will spend much more time in transit, right? If they are fighting down here, it will take much longer for them to get back and forth, and instead of when they have a dogfight over here, where it's just a very short flight from the airbase. So, if we want to keep up a sustainable force, I think we'll have to see that our strategic reserves over here that can come in immediately into battle will be much lower, so we'll have less capability to react to any incursions from these airfields. So that's sort of the background and the motivation why we are attacking over here. I am, to be honest, not particularly confident that there are that many planes left here. On the one hand, we shot down quite a couple already, and there are not that many in the air left. I think about 4 F-16s, some MiG-25s, although they might even come from the Canary Islands themselves. But nevertheless, we don't know what they really have and what the strike package could be. So what we want to do is disable at least this airfield, because here all the reasons just mentioned are much more pronounced, and maybe this airfield down here. We've already taken a look at the airfields before, but maybe let's look at that again in just very briefly. In command, airfields are generally made up of many things, as you can see over here. There's the main runway itself, which often has a taxiway as well, which can also be used as a runway. There are several access points between these. There are a lot of tarmac spaces and sometimes hangars where aircraft can be parked. There's also supporting structure, such as other things, such as tarmac space. Well, supporting structure. Let's leave it at that for now. And the way you can disable an airfield is varied. You can try to attack the runway itself, although you should be aware that when the taxiway is also runway capable or runway grade, they can just divert to that. You can also see that you should be wary of the length of that runway, because on an international airport like this, a 3,000 meter runway that is much more than a fighter craft would need it, and you'd really need to destroy this in multiple spaces so that they really don't have enough space to launch. Of course, you can also try to attack aircrafts themselves, so attack all of these spaces and maybe take them out. Although here that might also be very difficult because of the number of options where they could store planes, and since some of these shelters here are hardened, so also very hard to attack. As you can see, they have a concrete structure over there. What we would like to attack, therefore, and we've talked about this briefly earlier, is two things. We want to aim our attack at the supporting structure over here. In particular, the ammo pads, which can be used to store ammo, and this gas tank over here. If we take out every single ammo storage and the gas tank, we will operationally kill this airport. There might be still some aircraft on these tarmac spaces or in the hangars that have been where basically the ammo is just on the aircraft itself, or it's ready to go. So there might still be some individual flights coming out from that after we attack, but it's not such a drastic threat to us anymore. We want to operationally and strategically take out these airports, not necessarily take out the airport entirely as such. That's not the main objective. To do that, we have to identify the targets over here, and I think we saw earlier that we had, if I remember correctly, 3 ammo pads, one being here, and just to confirm that this isn't really that well armed, 300 damage points, well, heavily armed, and the second one would be here, again, very much the same structure. There's an ammo shelter, which is slightly better, I believe, at 300 damage points, heavy armor, but also kind of 12 by 20 meters, so pretty decent area at 240 square meters, of course, target area, so relatively easy to hit as well. Whereas these guys might be a bit smaller. No, same size actually. Yeah, so I think we have 3 ammo pads and just 1 fuel tank over here, which also should be relatively easy to hit. Yeah, which isn't armored at all and has a few damage points. So we need at least the capability to destroy 4 targets here to be rather confident that we can take out the airfield as such. But of course that is a minimum, and we'll want to probably have at least 1 or 2 abilities to strike in reserve in case we miss or in case anything funky happens to the plane on its way. And the situation down there was very similar for the second airport. What we know about their defenses so far is the following. We know that there's 1 radar dish over here, which is just sort of a big radar and not much attached to anything else, and this is just really a 2D air surveillance radar, so they don't even know how high we would be if they do spot us. However, the range is pretty dramatic at 160 nautical miles, so if we click on here, it should actually show us, yeah, that is the range of that these radar dish covers. However, with the important exception that this is set at an elevation of about 60 feet, as you can see on the mouse button, and there's a mountain range over here, which basically blocks vision for this radar, at least for very low flying aircraft. So if you look at the terrain over here, you can see it's pretty open to the coast, but it's very mountainous sort of all around it, and I think that already indicates that probably if we want to come in maybe a bit stealthily, we could do that by coming in from this side, maybe flying, taking a particularly interesting path through some of these valleys, and maybe come in from here, which looks like a riverbed, or maybe even from here, maybe between these 2 mountains over here. That would allow us a pretty stealthy approach. Probably we'd be only spotted at least somewhere in this region, or even potentially late. We also know that they do have defenses in that they have an Irehawk battery over here, which has a pretty decent capability to kill us. We've had a look at the Irehawk missile themselves already. I still find it a shame that it's not linked here. It really should be linked to the sensors and the Irehawk, but I'm not going to complain about that anymore. So we are expecting a battery here overall, which probably means 6 Irehawk launch vehicles and a couple of radar vehicles that are supporting it. And if we look at the contact report, we basically know that they do have this. You can also see that the radar coverage of this guy is much smaller than of the other radar dish later on, but of course this is attached to the actual missile. So the first thing that we need to take into account is that we probably want to take out these radar dishes so that at least we can come in much closer and maybe even disable this air battery entirely. We don't know whether they have any secondary radars over here, which they would only switch on if the first line of radar is taken out. but we'll have to see that later. Similarly, down here, I think this is also a radar range only thing, not entirely sure what that means, so what that is, but they probably have a relatively simple setup, similar setup down there. We know of these things because of our spy plane over here, basically, which we are currently taking in a bit closer down to that. In terms of what we got a couple of aircraft up here, and some of them are being readied, and the most important ones of these are of course the Hornets, which will do the actual strike. You can see we've prepared 4 of these paveway, that's not a paveway, weapons up here. So these are guided bombs with pretty decent accuracy. Well, the picture's wrong in the description too, but you can see that the description, so the probable, I don't know what that means exactly, circular error probability or something, is very low. So basically 2 meters, so that will definitely allow us to hit the targets that we were looking at earlier. Which is basically because it's homing and there's some tracker for which we need the spot. But the details of that are not that important. The important thing is that it does more damage than we need to, and we can carry 2 of them on each aircraft. So actually 2 aircraft might be enough to destroy all the targets that we're looking at. But we of course want to take some backup, so at least we are looking at 3 to 4 Hornets that are doing the attack. We'd also these guys do carry AMRAAMs, which I think we asked to be included in the loadout. Do we know what you asked to include? Oh, well, I'm not sure. But it's only 1 AMRAAM, so it's not the strongest defense. So we'll probably send out these guys with them, and they should be relatively fine to support them. The issue of it is that the aircraft up here in our higher in our northernmost airfield, the range and profile of these guys is that they could viably conduct a strike at 400 nautical miles. And if you look at the distance between this and this airport down here, you can see that it's just below 400 nautical miles, and I'm not that confident that that is a great idea. This is basically, this strike profile over here does include quite a bit of reserve, and you can see that this is a high, mid, high profile, so high approach, medium attack, high disengagement, cruising at quite a distance, then a dash on the target and back, and weapons release with some reserve in that. But I'm afraid that my planes would go evac bingo on me when they're just like here and say, nope, we don't have enough fuel, we are returning to base now, and then you sort of manually need to turn them around, and then they might be missiles flying, so I'm not particularly fond of that. So the first thing that we can be pretty sure of is that we need to, that I feel much more comfortable with some tankers somewhere on the way. So the first thing that we want to do is actually define a new mission, define area, and I think we'll do that over Spain because why not? We can do that. And we will do that here. So that is a new area, and we will define a mission for that, a new mission, and that will be a support mission of tankers. So we'll be sure to make that. Do we want to codename it? I don't think so. We'll just call it. What was the airfield's name down here? I forgot. Doesn't matter. We'll just call it Strike Airfield Tankers. That should be relatively fine. We'll not assign any planes to that right now, but and I don't want the 1/3 rule. We'll just send out the 2 planes from over here. We will tell these guys to be on the strike as tankers. And we'll directly do that immediately because these guys are pretty slow and we want to pre-position them in this area before we even launch our guys properly. The second most important thing over here is that we do have the Falcons over here, which is in ECM planes and which might disable their radar, or at least disable that pretty to a large extent. So that will be very useful. This is a bit quicker, so I think we can launch it somewhat later and along with the other aircraft, or just slightly before that. The typical speed of that should be around 450 nautical miles, which is actually the cruising speed of our Hornets as well, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, nearly at least. So we'll launch that soon, but not quite. And I think we'll take that on out here so that we can have a little distance to the airport. I don't want to be immediately next to it, just in case they do launch some aircraft. That would be, we'd be really vulnerable to that. So I'm going to define a new mission here, which we're also going to call Strike, ECM, and that should. So is that actually no? I think that's actually just a support mission or patrol. Seed. I think it's seed. Yeah, let's just put it on support pattern over here. That should be fine. Also not the 1/3 rule because we basically want to use it there. And we will definitively use active emissions on station only, so not while we are flying there, but that should also be fine. We will use the, where do we have the, oh yeah, there we go. I'll definitely want you to be using radar. Yes, I want you to be using OCM, and you don't have so that doesn't matter. At least on station, we should be very fine with that as well. I am still a bit worried that there might be an attack coming in from here, and they'll just dash for our support plane, and we only have one of these, so that's very vulnerable. So I want to protect these guys a bit as well, and I don't, to be honest, want to be using my main planes for that because they are doing something else. So I will pick these. I will define a new mission, and that will be a patrol mission for our strike profile over there, and it will be a watch in the western approaches, which we will. Did I do that right? No, it's fine. Strike, air, intercept, and we will be placing some. Yeah, that's good. Some of the aircraft in rota over here, the Harriers, on that mission, and there are currently 2 available, some AMRAAMs, and at least they should be able to dash in while our plane while the other plane disengages, and be able to delay any of these guys until support has arrived. Lastly, let's have a look at Mahon, which is about 200 nautical miles or 170 nautical miles from our target, and about 400 nautical miles or 350 nautical miles, sorry, from the secondary target. By the way, we should mark that as hostile, and see what we got here. Here we have a bit of a more differentiated layout. The most important, and I think the first, guys, maybe even before our actual strike, will be that we will have one of these F-18s, which do have HARM missiles. So homing on active radar emissions, I want to say. passive radar homing. What's the age? Yeah, I don't care. So basically these guys are targeting their radar installations, and especially if you take out this radar installation, their Eyehawk might be blind, and that would be very, very helpful for us, because that would enable us to destroy these guys just by disabling their capability to engage us at all. So we'll have at least one of these guys fly in early, take out this radar dish, or at least try to take out this with the other missile, and then probably have one of our aircraft here with the harm profile on a very close standby, so that it can engage any radar that would be turned on while our strike is happening. So that's basically the first part of our support for the primary mission. The second bit that will be supporting our primary mission is this guy over here, which has some Mavericks, and these guys will be very useful to engage any sort of ground mobile units, so that I'm particularly worried that there might be some other sort of AA that we're currently not seeing, because maybe it's not radar based, or maybe it's AAA, so anti-aircraft artillery that is more short range. Maybe not so much if we're flying a high attack pattern, which we will of course be doing, because I don't know, for all I know they might have 20-30 Shilkas down here, which would be sort of Soviet anti-aircraft guns, which could wreck us at very low altitude. So we'll probably fly in mid or higher altitude, and at that range the Maverick here, which is only available in 30 minutes, but that's fine. Until the tankers really get here, we will be, this guy should be ready. You can also see that the range profile on this guy is sufficient to get us to the first target, probably even to the second target with 100 nautical miles cover. But as the strike is happening, if we are successful, we might shift our tankers a bit closer to the Strait of Gibraltar and thereby shorten the return. Lastly, we'll also be sending in this guy as a bit of a backup. That's just dump bombs, but it's more explosives on target, and that might be fine. Actually, we might be sending this guy in just very slightly ahead of the other guys, and even at 50 meters, it's not that unlikely to actually hit one of the targets that we're looking to destroy. Especially as these guys can carry 4 of these. We also have just more basic strike material over here, and that of course will be very, very helpful. We'll also be using these guys, the heavy MRAMs, as a sort of a near cover for that. So the range on these guys, range in terms of mission range, is really low. But they do each carry 6 MRAMs, so they'll be hugely helpful in suppressing any aircraft that might just launch from here as we go. But they'll be part of the strike package, just slightly behind the aircraft, behind the primary strike aircraft. We also, by the way, have a couple of Harriers here returning to base. They might be ready soon. We still have some Falcons up in the air that will probably, until we really reach the strike, be out of juice. But I do hope that until then our light aircraft here will return. So we'll always be able to engage in sort of the separate missions up here. And of course we also have the carrier over here, which still has some Harriers which are ready. Though, as you can see, once the quick turnaround goes down, we pretty much can, this really increases the downtime between missions. And we are actually kind of running low. We don't really have any aircraft here that could launch right now, so I think it will be important to keep other aircraft in the area. Okay, so that's the basic idea in terms of the flight path. I think we'll probably be taking, hopefully be taking out this radar first, and then come in high to sort of here, dive in low or very close to the ground, and maybe do a little ground hugging profile on the first strike craft over here, and then just arrive. And in terms of just as a recap, we are sending in tankers now. They will be pre-positioned here. Very shortly before these tankers do arrive here, we'll send out our offensive ECM aircraft to this area where it will circle around, trying to disable these raiders by blocking them, by jamming them. Then, on a secondary note, once the tankers are in position, we will send, or even maybe just a tiny bit before that, we'll send out our first strike package from over here, consisting of currently 4 paveway armed Hornets. These will refuel here, and while they are refueling, our guys from here will form up, including especially the dump bombs, the Mavericks. Before they even get there, one of the harm aircraft will, or as they are doing that, one of the harm aircraft will take off, probably the first being the first aircraft launching from Macron, taking out these radar dishes as soon as possible, so maybe we can even see what else they got, returning to base. The second harm aircraft will be supporting the main strike mission, and the main strike mission will include 2x2 bombers, which will trying to take out all of these 4 targets, which means we can put 8 bombs on 4 targets, which should be more than enough. Just shortly behind that, we will have the Maverick aircraft. Sorry about that. The Maverick aircraft, and the third aircraft will be the second harm aircraft. So bombers, Maverick to suppress any ground defenses, harm to prevent any radar from being switched on, and behind that our heavy fighters, or our fighters in the heavy loadout. While all the time the offensive aircraft circle here, and they will be protected by 2 Harriers from Jota over there. Alright, that basically sets up our idea for the strike pattern over here. I just wanted to confirm that everything is okay, because we realized that our aircraft were close to being readied. Furthest one is 30 minutes, which unfortunately is from the strike package, but then again, even this is about 200 nautical miles from Torrejon, so that's probably even the time that our tankers will form up and need to come over here and form up. And if the tankers are in the air 5 minutes too much, that doesn't matter all too much. Another important point which I haven't mentioned at all so far is that our strike will probably be happening at night, around maybe, we'll be probably on target around maybe 10 p.m., so 22 hours. So we should really have checked earlier, and of course I did that but never mentioned it, that this is a day and night capable strike pattern. So we don't need to be concerned that they could be worried by that. You can also see that the weather is clear, so everything is fine, and we will be able to conduct our launch like that. So that's basically it for this episode. I just wanted to talk a bit about our ideas behind the strike, why we want to do it, how we want to achieve it, what capabilities we have, how we want to suppress theirs, and what might be the unknowns that or the known unknowns that we will be facing down here. Of course, things could always go awry, but then again, we're not that far from our home base, so maybe we can disengage if things would be too bad. So, next episode, we will be getting more into unpausing the game actually and conducting a strike, when we will be attacking this fleet down here, just to soften it up a bit with our 2 submarines over here, so that later on we'd be able to engage it a bit better with our strike craft, our F-18s, then probably reconfigured for a harpoon strike over here. But this is going to be for the next episode. For this episode, I thank you guys for watching, and to see you guys next time. Bye bye.